Miracle. Okay, good evening, everybody. So I should have PMs, APMs, ADMs, and SMs on the call. So this evening we're going to be looking at the execution phase, and what I thought would be good. And when I was speaking to Moji, you said, okay, let's have a look at it in relation to waterfall versus agile. Obviously, we're working in an agile environment now, but you may work in a waterfall, or you may have worked in a waterfall. And I know that you've been looking at the different phases. So we looked at the initiation stage, looked at the planning stage, and today we're going to look at the execution phase. So just to kind of give you an overview of what we're going to look at this evening, we're going to look at introduction of the execution phase, an overview of it in relation to waterfall versus agile. And we will look at the step-by-step activities within this execution stage. And again, referring back to waterfall versus agile, we'll look at the different artifacts. I'll show you some examples of some artifacts that you will see, and we'll discuss in a little bit more detail about the different meetings and who are the key people that you would expect to attend these meetings. And then just lastly, just to kind of reiterate the importance of this phase in project management. And then I'll open up for some question and answers. And then lastly, I will set you on an assignment going back to something we discussed on the initiation phase. Okay, so what is the execution phase? So the execution phase is where a project plan is put into action. So we've done the groundwork, we've looked at what the goal is, we've populated our backlog, we spent some time planning. Now this is the time where the plans are transformed into tangible results. You will see the project deliverables, and this is a very, very crucial stage in both waterfall and agile, and they are very different within those two methodologies. However, it's all about kind of bringing the project to life. So the goal really of this execution phase is to create the deliverables as outlined in the project plan. And it's important that while we're doing that, we are maintaining quality. As a PM, it's something that you want to keep at the forefront of your mind. Also, the importance of staying on budget and also meeting deadlines, because we know we have to give our feedback back to our stakeholders. So that is very, very important. So let's look at the difference of these execution phase in relation to waterfall and agile. So when it comes to the waterfall execution, it follows basically a linear phase. So it it goes from one phase to the other phase, step by step or phase by phase. So tasks are completed sequentially. So there is quite a step one, step two kind of flow you will see going through there. And also each phase builds upon the previous one. So something has to happen first before the next task can happen. And it's really important that in this phase, especially in waterfall, there's very strict adherence to the initial project plan. So within your project plan, you would have set out what's going to happen. So maybe it's going to be the development's going to happen first, and then the testing is going to happen, and then the feedback, and then you've got the release. It is very much very strict to the initial project plan. You will find within waterfall there are minimal changes once the execution begins. We want to follow a plan that has been set out. Progress is measured just like with any project with milestones, and these milestones are predetermined, and they are success. And the success of this is basically measured, is often defined and closely in line with final product. So it will match what you have said at the beginning. So the original specifications, you will determine how successful that is to say, okay, how well does my final product meet what was originally said at the beginning? So the specification that was written at the start in your planning phase, how well does your final outcome match that within waterfall? Whereas when it comes to agile is more of an iterative approach. Obviously, you've had your sessions talking about what agile is, and specifically looking at Scrum and kind of its iterative approach. And the same way when it comes to the execution stage, you'll see this. So the project is broken down into smaller, manageable chunks. And like is what you would have learned when you're looking at Scrum is that they call these sprints. So depending on the project you're working on, depending on the organization, your sprint length will be determined. So sprints can be as short as 1 week up to nothing more than 4 weeks. And that is what the Scrum guide says. Like you don't want anything longer than 4 weeks because technically after 4 weeks it's not really going to be really kind of short. Even 4 weeks is actually quite long. If you think about it in terms of kind of following that iterative approach. So like I mentioned, so your sprints will typically between 1 to 4 weeks. And in this execution stage, I'm going to say quote unquote execution stage, you will find within sprints, you have planning, you will have execution, and you will have review stages, all within this small iterative section. And that's the whole kind of essence between agile. So this method again, it allows continuous feedback and adaptation. So compared to waterfall, where it's very strict and rigid, with the kind of agile methodology, you will find that there's always continuous feedback. There's always adaptation. So this is a good way because it allows the team to respond quickly to changes. So if we're getting feedback, whether that is from stakeholders, whether it's like sponsors or those that are going to be using the product, you're able to make those quick changes within the execution stage. And the success of agile is measured by the delivery of working product increments. So whereas within agile, the 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 success is measured at the end when you see the final product, whereas with agile, you can see your success in short increments. So it could be okay, in the first sprint, we've done this, and you've got a product increment and also achieving customer satisfaction. So those are how they differ. And again, you could argue that at the end of it, yes, you still have a product, but again, within agile, you see those um, incremental value within the product in kind of shorter cycles, whereas waterfall is right at the end. So let's look at the waterfall execution process in a little bit more detail in terms of kind of how you would relate it to you as an agile delivery manager, project manager, PM, or even a scrum master, because there are a lot of jobs out there now that, yes, they are scrum masters, but they might have some elements of project management within it as well. So our first step is task allocation based on a project plan. So as the project manager will basically assign different team members according to the detailed plan that you created in the planning phase. So there will be certain tasks that you will assign to certain members of the team. Again, the plan will define specific tasks. It will define timelines. You will define dependencies, resource allocation. Each of the team will have clear instructions on the task and deadlines. And at this, again, with waterfall, we know that waterfall is not flexible. So there is little flexibility for changes. So at this point, the tasks are allocated based on the project plan. So what has been set out at the beginning is how this is executed in this part. And then following on, once everybody knows what it is they're supposed to be doing, as the project manager has assigned, there is the completion of the task. So this is actually the doing of the work. So like I mentioned before, when I looked at the overview, certain things have to happen before one step, just like if you're climbing a step, or like you talk about a waterfall, it falls down. Or even if you're going for a step, you have to go on step one before you go step two and step three, etc. So tasks must be completed in a strict order, which each phase, which is dependent on successful completion of the previous stage. So before we can move on to step two, step one has to be completed. Before we can move on to step three, step two has to be completed. And again, these phases typically include requirements, design, development, testing, and deployment. So those are the steps that may happen. So before any development can happen, the design has to be done. Before any design has to be done, requirements have to be gathered. Before any testing can be done, the development has to be done. So you can see how everything all kind of interlinks together, and they are dependent and on the successful deployment of that. The project cannot move forward to the next phase until the current one is fully completed and approved. So this is within Agile, not Agile, sorry, within Waterfall. It will not move on. You will not move on to testing until all the development is completed. Deployment will not be done until all testing is completed. And the same with the development of the site will not start until everything has been designed or whatever the project is. Again, I'm sure some of you are thinking, oh, this is very different to what you're doing now. Obviously, we're working within Scrum. You can see, yes, certain things are happening already and not everything has been completed. But within Waterfall, that's the process that it follows. And within the development or the execution phase, sorry, of the project within Waterfall, you have regular progress reviews with project managers. So there could be formal progress reviews are conducted at predetermined milestones. So you might have it at the end of each phase, and then there will be kind of a review of what has been done. Project managers will assess progress. You will address issues, and you ensure that tasks are completed according to the project plan, and any deviations are evaluated for potential impacts. So if there has been issues that you've started to notice within the execution phase, this is where you might have to look at your kind of your risk log or your issues log and thinking about, okay, how is this going to affect the project? Is it going to affect the timeline? Is it going to affect the budget? Are there certain people you need to have a conversation with? So with changes managed through a formal change control process. So if there has to be a change within the timeline or budget, there is a formal change control process that has to happen within Waterfall. So now to look at Agile. So when it comes to Agile, and you guys are on Sprint 2 now, and you've already started to see, okay, what you've been able to do in the first sprint. So this is more or less just like like a reminder. Okay, yeah, I've done this. I understand this. Okay, this is actually the execution phase when it comes to project management. So the first step is obviously sprint planning. So you guys have done sprint planning. Within sprint planning, it happens at the beginning of each of your sprint. So like I mentioned, usually 1 or 4 weeks, depending on what you have determined, or the organization has determined. And I know you guys are working on a 2-week sprint. So within that sprint planning, the Scrum team will come together. You will define your sprint goals and you'll prioritize your tasks. Your tasks will come what has been written in your backlog. Yes, again, backlog is another artifact which was mentioned within your initiation phase, which would have been collated with the PO and stakeholders. So your PO, your product owner, presents the highest priority items from the product backlog. So what they seem as what's going to be the most important or what is the focus of the sprint. So which the team then breaks down into tasks for the sprint backlog. And then the team sets clear sprint objectives and tasks, estimates to ensure achievable goals within a sprint timeframe. So within that sprint planning, it's important, like obviously you guys do your estimation, and then you look at that and think, okay, within my team, are we able to actually meet this sprint goal with what we have in terms of resources, capacity, and even the skill set of the team? And then you've got the sprint is execution, which is the actual sprint itself. So your 2-week sprint or your 1 or 4-week sprint. So within this sprint execution, you could say the team is basically working, they're getting on with the work, they're doing the development, they're doing the testing, and they're working on the focused iteration that is a priority of that sprint. Within there, which we're going to talk about a little bit later when we look more on the different meetings and attendees to these meetings, you will have maybe you will have your stand-ups where the Scrum Master will kind of make sure that the team is still aligned, and we're looking at the progress and discussing any impediments that we may have, where then you're able to look at that. Even as a project manager, you want to keep an eye on the progress of the work that is done. Again, if there's any challenges that come across, or any issues, this is the time where you can focus on kind of working together, or maybe removing any of these impediments. And then one of the other things that happen within the sprint execution is the sprint review and retrospective, which I also believe you guys have had, as if because you're on in sprint 2 now. So obviously you're reviewing of the work that has been done, or the work that has been executed, you could say, within that sprint, where you get feedback from your stakeholders. And then in terms of the retrospective, you will look at yourself within the team and reflect, okay, what has done what has gone well, what can be improved. So you can see how that differs a lot from waterfall. Waterfall execution is going by step by step by step, whereas within within agile you have kind of short because not even execution, because you also have planning, you have execution, and testing, and reviewing, and retrospectives, all within like those short iterative processes. And then what's really good as well, when you look at your retrospective, you're thinking about, okay, how can your plans be adapted or improved for future sprints? What you are able to do in that particular sprint will determine what your next sprint goal is, or what your next focus is as a team. So even within what I was talking about, there were some things that I mentioned in terms of artifacts that are created during these phases. So you've got your waterfall artifacts on your left-hand side. So you've got your project plan updates. You've got your status reports. So in terms of, like I said before, that you will have predetermined milestones. So in those predetermined milestones, you will look back and see, okay, the little stakeholders knows, okay, this is what has happened. These are the lessons learned. These are the risks. These are the issues that has occurred. You will let them know if the deliverables of the project is still on budget, if it's going to be completed on time. So those are the kind of things that you have in your status report. Even in my workplace, in our reports, you have where you rate them. So you have a RAG rating. So you've got red, amber, green, depending on the status of the project. If things are going to plan in terms of time, you will say it's green. Or if there are certain things that are delaying the project, maybe it will be red, amber, or amber. So yeah, that's where you would do that. You will have change requests. Like I said, if there is a change that needs to happen, a change request will have to go through, and then that will have to go through to your stakeholders, where you would input information. Okay, what's the change, the benefit of the change, and then you have like everything outlined in terms of, okay, resources, if it's a resource change, if it's a budget change, whatever it is that you need in relation to that change, that is then put forward before that change can actually go through within the waterfall project. You have your risk logs, or your RAID logs. You've got your risks, your assumptions, your issues, and your dependencies. Again, as the PM or ADM, APM, it's your responsibility to make sure that these logs are updated regularly. If there's any changes, you are when maybe weekly, fortnightly updating those, and making sure that key stakeholders have visibility of that. And then you have your quality assurance documents. So those are some of the artifacts within waterfall. When it comes to agile, obviously one big important artifact is your product backlog item. And what's interesting, actually, because in waterfall, you might have all the requirements right at the beginning, whereas if agile, your product backlog items are always updated. So things can be added, things can be taken away. So it's very, very flexible. But that is a key sorry, the backlog itself is a key artifact. Then you've got your sprint backlogs. Again, each sprint, so your 1 or 2 week or 4 week sprint, you have specific PBIs, which are your descriptions of the work that is going to be carried out, the feature that is going to be carried out. So where you would have your acceptance criteria, where you have the description and information, and you also have the wireframe in there. So your sprint backlogs will be determined each sprint depending on what the goal was. You have specific sprint backlogs for that. You have your burn down charts, which will show how the team is, you can say, burning down, or basically reducing the size of the backlog in terms of the work that has been committed. How are we able to get the work completed within the 2 week sprint? Are we burning down at a good rate that we can see as an SM, as an APM, that by the end of sprint 4 or end of the sprint, we will get the work done, as in done, that we have committed in the sprint? You have your sprint review reports. So that's your presentations that you give to your stakeholders. Those are very key artifacts as an APM to have. And it's good for you to kind of be able to, when it comes to your reports, you want to be able to give them at a high level so that your stakeholders know what is going on, know what work has been done, know the progress, so they know in terms of any feedback that they will want to give you, can include that, and that also can really help in kind of the next stages of what you are going to do. Also, your sprint review reports are a good place for you to inspect, for you to have a look at, okay, the work that has been done, and be able to kind of compare that with what still needs to be done. And then your retrospective notes. So depending on whether you use the retrospective that is on your Azure DevOps, or retrospectives that are on Miro, any kind of whiteboard, it's something that is important that you keep as an SM, as an APM, ADM, as a kind of a reminder of the team, okay, what we've done really well, also what we could do better, and also kind of action points. One of the key things I always take away from my retrospective notes are, what are we going to action for next sprint? How are we going to make this sprint better? How are we going to make our team a high performing team and working at working collaboratively really well? So that's some of them. And then here are some other ones. I do apologize, these images may not be great, but another one in terms of planning and even kind of the execution phase of waterfall is your Gantt chart. So you would have set out all the different tasks that are going to be completed within this project, and then you will be updating your planned time against the actual time. So if you said, okay, the development of, I'm just thinking in terms of, you guys are working on an e-commerce project, and the development of the home page with certain features was going to take 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks, you would have planned that out, and then you would go back and put the actual time and say, okay, this is actually how long it took. And as an SM in particular, but also an ADM, your burn down chart is something that's really, really important. You want to be able to see that the work is burning down, that they're getting rid of the work that we have committed. And it's something that you can go back and review and see, okay, we're able to burn down this amount of story points or effort within each sprint. So it's good to have that. And then lastly, your sprint backlog items, or your sprint backlog, sorry, shall I say. Okay, so we're going to look at your meetings and key attendees. So throughout the execution stage, whether it's with waterfall or with agile, there are meetings that take place, and there are key people that you would expect to see at these meetings. And obviously there are key objectives for each of those meetings as well. So the W obviously stands for waterfall, and the A is for agile. Just trying to keep not too many things on my slide. Okay, so the first one we look at is kind of waterfall is status updates. So it depends on your organization how often these happen, but they tend to happen weekly or bi-weekly meetings. Um, and it's where you might have project managers, you might have team leads, you will have maybe key stakeholders, and these are formal meetings and they will focus on progress against the project. So you will discuss your completed task, upcoming milestones, and again, any potential risks or issues. So that is like your status updates. Some organizations call them stand-ups actually, but they don't necessarily happen daily like they do within Scrum. And that links quite nicely to the next one, which is our daily stand-ups within Agile. So these are daily. And so before I forget, with your status updates, there isn't a time limit. So that's the difference between Agile and Waterfall. There isn't a set time box when it comes to status updates. I've been on some meetings that could be up to an hour, giving status updates. Whereas when it comes to um, the daily stand-up, this is time box and it's time box at 15 minutes. So with this one, these happen daily. So this is a brief daily meeting where each team member shares what they have accomplished yesterday, what they plan to do today, and any blockers they're facing. Those are like I'm going to say the OG, the original questions that were in this kind of saying what you ask in a stand up. But I've seen people that ask questions. Okay, what are you doing to meet our goal today, or what have you done yesterday to meet that work towards the sprint goal? However way you want to word it, because I know sometimes people get a little bored of, what did I do yesterday, what did I do today, etc., etc. But as long as it's a nice, quick, short update of what you're doing um, towards the sprint goal. And again, as a Scrum Master or even an ADM, you want to think about the blockers. Are there any blockers that are hindering your team making that progress? What is really nice about these dailies that it helps maintain team alignment. So it's you're able to see that everybody's on the same page, everyone's working towards the same sprint goal, and then you're quickly able to identify and address any impediments. The people that will attend will be the entire Scrum team. So you would have your developers. So the developers within the Scrum Guide are your developers who are creating whatever the product is. So in your e-commerce product, as well as your QAs, your testers are known as the development team. So they will be at your daily stand up. If you're lucky, you might have your PO there as well, and you will also have the Scrum Master will be there. So yeah, so that is your daily stand up. Another meeting that you have in Waterfall is change control meetings, and this is as needed. So if there is a change that needs to be raised or something needs to be changed, that meeting will be held, and again it will include involving project managers and stakeholders to review and approve or reject proposed changes. I laugh when I say reject because not all the times are when changes are put forward, they're not always approved, and sometimes it can be a bit of a shock, especially when you put a lot of time putting in the change report. But yes, they can be rejected in relation to the project scope. So your proposed change could be project scope, it could be to do with timeline, or it could do with the resources. The meetings ensure that any deviations from the original plan are carefully considered and documented. So Waterfall doesn't really like change, like we mentioned before. It's sequential, step by step. However, it's not totally 100% opposed to change, but there needs to be certain meetings put in place for that and for them to really kind of consider, okay, is this the right thing to do? So yeah, so then like I mentioned, so these are put forward and documented, and then again the whole idea is to make sure that we maintain project alignment with the strategic goals and control scope changes. We don't want much changes, but if there are scope changes, we want to be able to control them. And then another meeting within Agile is your sprint review. So your sprint review is held at the end of the sprint, and it involves the Scrum teams and stakeholders. The team demonstrates completed work. You gather the feedback and discuss the next steps. So these meetings ensure that the project remains aligned with the stakeholders' expectation. And because this is done at the end of each sprint, so either 1, 2, 3, or 4 weeks, no longer than 4 weeks, you are able to get feedback earlier rather than later. So can you imagine, like I say, with waterfall, you're working months, 3, 6 months, 9 months on the project, and then at the end is when you're going to get the feedback from the stakeholder, and they could tell you all this work you've done is no longer in scope or is no longer relevant. Whereas you can get this feedback every 2 weeks within your sprint from your stakeholders with your sprint review. And this is what I really love about Agile and Scrum, that you can get those changes in that feedback there straight away and make that change. So that's why we talk about adaptability within Agile. And again, you want to make sure that our work, or the work that your team is developing, aligns with the stakeholders' expectations and aligns with what it is that they want. And if things do change, then that's the time that you can implement that change after 2 weeks, other than later on, like 6, 9 months down the line. Okay, so these are just some of the meetings and key attendees to that. So I just want to kind of summarize and reiterate kind of the importance of like the execution phase, both waterfall and in Agile. So in waterfall, this stage is crucial, it's critical to maintaining the critical flow and ensuring that the project stays on task. It allows for control changes and provides high visibility of the progress against initial phase. This structured approach is particularly beneficial for projects with well-defined requirements and minimal expected changes. So you tend to find, like you said, there are some projects that waterfall just suits them. It just does. Even though as an agile delivery manager myself, I'm definitely an agile advocate, but there are some projects that waterfall just suits. And yeah, so if that's the case, then yeah, waterfall would be the best outcome or the best methodology for that. Whereas in agile, it's the execution phase is embodied in sprints. When we look at in terms of Scrum, it's crucial for the delivery value incrementally and adapting to changing requirements. So Agile allows that change. We've got that flexibility for if change does happen, whether that's to do with the stakeholders or with the requirements. Agile allows that. It enables continuous feedback from stakeholders, which allows the team to pivot quickly if needed. So that's the great thing about Agile. If we need to change a goal, it can be done quickly. It doesn't have to go through the whole change request process that it is when it comes to waterfall. And this flexibility is especially valuable in a dynamic environment. So where requirements may evolve throughout the project, where requirements might change throughout the project. So, excuse me, yeah. So this is where that is important. And common benefits. So regardless of the methodology, whether it's waterfall or agile, the execution phase is basically where ideas transform into tangible results. So this is where all the ideas that have come together in the initiation stage, where we've talked about A, B, or C, or the plans, or where the planning has been put into place. We've talked about milestones, where we've done roadmaps, etc. This is the phase where we actually start seeing the result. We start seeing the products come into life. It's the heart of the project management. It's where the team collaborates to overcome challenges. They work together to create deliverables, and effective execution is key to meeting project goals. We know we have a goal at the end of the day, and this execution phase is where we see those goals hopefully being met and hopefully satisfying our stakeholders and hopefully and ultimately at the end delivering successful outcomes. This is where we see in the execution phase. Um, that is it from me, guys. So before I go on to telling you what I would like you to do as a little assignment, does anybody have any questions on this execution phase?
I have a question, if it's okay. Is
Yes,
it?
please. Yep,
Yeah.
you go ahead.
I have a question in terms of the artifacts, yeah.
Hmm.
In agile,
Yes.
yeah. What are they? What do we have to do we have to add the notes on the actual project, or maybe share it on the SharePoint?
So it depends. Let me go back to that screen. So it depends on your team where
Mm-hmm.
you are storing your artifacts. So personally, for me, as an agile delivery manager, I will have for my team either a SharePoint or a wiki, which is found in your Azure DevOps, and there should be a section
Okay.
for
Mm-hmm.
SM artifacts or ADM artifacts. So it's my responsibility to make sure that okay, the reports for that sprint one PowerPoint is in that wiki. Um, the snapshot of the sprint backlog for sprint one is in the wiki or it's in the SharePoint. Um, my retrospective notes or the outcomes from retrospectives is kept in that wiki. So
Mm.
as a team, you decide where you want it to be. I would just always say start off with a wiki, and then
Okay.
if you have a SharePoint, you will have documents on there as well, your artifacts there as well.
And what other and things we could add as well? And
In the
uh,
wiki,
yeah, in the
or
wiki, yeah, in the artifacts, yeah.
so
As
your artifacts, you've got your product backlogs. You have
okay.
you'll put because in your sprint reports, to be honest, you will have pictures of your metrics. So your burn down charts, you will
Yeah.
have your velocity charts. You will also have maybe your team charter will be in your wiki as well. Um,
Yeah, yeah, in sorry, my second question is, then I'm done.
yeah, that's fine.
You just said that now, team charter.
Hmm.
Is it, do we have to do it at before the spring started? It's like it's similar to initiative.
Initiation. So yes,
Initiation, sorry, yeah.
yes, yes, and yes. So when your team comes together, the first thing will be your team charter. So
Mm-hmm.
I believe you guys should have done it already. Remember, it's a working document. When you work in the work environment 9 to 5, you might spend a whole day or a couple of days creating your team charter. So a newly formed team will spend a lot of time putting together the ways of working, the roles and responsibilities, your definition of done, and that is a working document. So things can be added in terms of as you review every kind of 2 weeks within that. But yeah, your team charter should be there as well.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Any more questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, please.
No, it's not really from today's session. I think it's from last week's session. Uh yes, I know Modri said roadmap and delivery plan. Roadmap is like uh the high level and delivery plan is like at the low level. I believe plan is high level, low plan. Roadmap is the low level. Well, I don't know if you can in a scenario base if you can differentiate them so we know what we're doing.
So your roadmap is your high level, and your deliverable plan is your low level. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that one. I just
No, I'm
it's
asking
getting
you. That's
confused.
the way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what's interesting, you've actually talked about roadmap. Before I move on to that, I just want to double check there aren't any more questions in relation to what has just been delivered, and then I'll talk about that because your assignment for me is actually going to be the roadmap. So, I will talk about the difference for that as well for you. Um, so yeah, are there any other questions in terms of the, to be honest, when it comes to the execution, I was even talking to Moji about this before, like a lot of this stuff is ongoing. When we look at the artifacts, they kind of generate themselves, so there isn't necessarily a part, yeah, they generate themselves apart from your sprint report, which you do at the end with the collaboration of your team. But a lot of the artifacts or the documentation, apart from like the change request, is created as the sprint or the project goes along. So that's fine. And so are we good with that? So what I wanted to give you, and I'll explain the roadmap and I'll give you some examples of what you want to do, because I know, just want to check something quickly. So you were given a deliverable plan from Moji, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. And I want to give you, okay, that's fine. So in terms of your roadmap, you will find that here's an example on the screen. It's quite high level in terms of some of the points that you would deliver. So here, I know this is not the best example, but here you have features along here. You could even add on here, like, let me see, I think this next one has times. So you've got Q1, Q3, or you can break it down because we're working in sprints, as in, okay, sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3, sprint 4. Yeah. And then along this side, you can have features or your epics. Let's say your epics, actually. So your epics. So you would have to work, and I would encourage you, ADMs, APMs, SMs, to work with your BAs in terms of what the epics are and then your features. So if we have, I'm just thinking, what you guys are doing, it could be your homepage, and then on your homepage you've got your menu, you've got your body, and you've got your footer. Yeah, these are your features. So your epic would be the homepage, and then you would have the feature of your menu, your body, and then your footer. So if I'm going to set out my roadmap, I'm going to say that my homepage will be completed in 2 sprints. And then I would say, okay, sprint 1, the menu will be completed. So I'll create maybe a block or a line or an arrow, which will be the menu, and that will go across to 2 sprints. Then your footer, is that going to be something that started in sprint 1? If you think about what has been done already, if not, maybe it starts at sprint 2. Then I would draw my next arrow starting from sprint 2, and that will end at the end of sprint 2. Then I will go ahead onto the next epic, whether it's to do with the cart feature or the shopping feature, or if it's to do with policy, whatever the feature is or the epic is. And then I would kind of space out, and they'll be overlapping. Remember, this roadmap is so as a live document, it can change. It's not necessarily set in stone. So you could even, like I said, you could even break it down so that it just says, okay, homepage will be done by sprint 2. Then you've got the shopping or the sign-in features will be completed by sprint 3. The e-commerce features will be started in sprint 2 and completed by sprint 4. So that would be more high level, and then you could break it down into more of each of the product backlog items in more detail. So if you look here, you've got here more kind of an overview, not so low level as in each increment or each kind of PBI that has been developed. I'm not sure if that's helped at all, Miracle.
Yeah, what you're saying is we'll break it down to the epics,
I would even, for your roadmap, I would even keep it as maybe the feature level. So you've got homepage. So as a stakeholder, I want to know when my homepage is completed. Your homepage is going to be complete because I'm thinking about your MVP, your most viable products. So what that means is at the end of sprint 3, can I release a product? If you can, then there are certain elements of that website that need to be working. So I'm thinking, okay, I want to let people know about my business. So what my first thing would be having my homepage completed, and then people can maybe know a little bit about the products or know a little bit about the company before then they're able to go on to, okay, buy in. And then my next milestone would be, okay, when they're able to find out information about the products that I'm selling. And then my next one will be, okay, when they're then able to register. Yeah, so it would be more of the feature level, whereas when you're looking at the deliverables, you would then look at, okay, in terms of my PBIs, what are the actual work that's going to be done? So in my homepage, I'm going to have all the menus done. The menus include the about us, the contact us, the shop features. My footer includes contact us, etc., etc.
Okay. I think it's getting there now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's getting to. What about the delivery plan?
Delivery plan is what you want to make sure that, okay, so when you're thinking about delivery, it's what you want to release. So you were saying, okay, in the first 3 sprints, this is what's going to be done. So therefore, this can be, so therefore your MVP can be delivered in terms of, okay, these are A, B, C, D, E features are going to be fully developed, fully tested, and bug-free and ready to be deployed.
I don't get that.
You don't get that. So what you said, you've got a delivery plan.
Yeah.
So I'm
But
trying to think.
she was like, we can create it from our roadmap.
So when you're going to say date by date, what features are going to be delivered by that time? So you can say in sprint 1, 2, and 3. I know, sorry, Mary, I've seen your hand. I'm not ignoring you. So sprint 1, 2, and 3, you are going to focus on your homepage and I'm going to say maybe your shop features. So that will be high level sprint 1, 2, and 3. But then you're going to say by this particular date, in terms of the homepage, you would have your about us, you would have your menu, you would have your contact us, you would have your shop that will be delivered in 3 weeks' time or 4 weeks' time.
Oh, okay. So what you're saying is that the delivery plan is like taking the session from the roadmap and probably creating, how do I put it now? Okay, the roadmap is for the whole project.
Yes.
But the delivery plan is like you're taking a session, like okay, probably you want to deliver the home page in 2 sprints, and you are making a delivery plan for that particular homepage first.
Exactly.
Okay.
Go on, Mary. Sorry, Mary. I know your hand has been up for a while.
It's fine now. America.
No worries, thank you. With the roadmap, you said we should plan depend of the epic, right? Of each spring.
Yes, I would. Yeah, epics or even epics or even the features.
Okay. For example, last 2 weeks, the first spring, obviously the BO she let us know what is the epic, what we're doing, and this week the second spring as well. But in terms of that, spring 3 and 4 and 5, I don't have the information for me to know what is has to be done, so I can create my roadmap. I don't know.
Yes, so you will
Yeah,
need to speak with your BAs. The BAs will have
you
an
would tell
idea
me.
of what. Yeah, the
Oh,
BAs will have an idea of what that is.
okay. And what software did you use now? This map. What type of software we can use to create the roadmap?
The roadmap, you can use PowerPoint, you can use Excel.
PowerPoint.
Yeah,
Okay.
anything that you want. Oh, Miracle, are you still recording? I didn't realize you're still
All right. Thank
recording.
you. Bye. Thank you.